Hello, my happy corrupted wargamers. Welcome back to Happy Corrupted Wargaming. Today we're going to talk about an exceptionally important subject in Warhammer 40,000 that many people are struggling against in order to combat. So this is going to be the fight first ability, and in this video we're going to go through the specific tactics that you have to have in order to defeat fights first. And trust me, it's more than just shoot that unit. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to be showing you each one of these tactics. I'm going to explain how it works, and then I'm going to switch to the TTS view, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do it, and it's not that complicated. So you're going to learn a ton of value in this video, so just make sure you check it all out. If, as always, you have any questions and maybe I need to clarify things, or if you have, if you just like the video, or if you have like some concerns, you're like, hey, I don't think this is actually correct, please type it down in the comments down below. You know, I do read all the comments and I respond to it, all of them. At least the ones, like the first comment in the first few days, I respond to basically all of them. So thank you all for your attention, and I'm going to hop right into this video right now. So we'll talk about exactly what Fights First does. I'm going to talk about a bunch of the problem units that have Fights First and why they're big problems. And then I'm going to talk about 3 different methods of actively countering Fights First. That is not just shoot that unit. Okay, so the Bane of Melee. In the current rule set, Fights First units, well, they fight first. And this is given to all units that charge. So if you declare a charge, you get the ability Fights First. The only exception to this is if you use the Heroic Intervention stratagem, because you don't get the Fights First bonus when you use that stratagem, even though technically you do charge. So that's really important to understand. Remember, if you use Heroic Intervention to countercharge your opponent in your opponent's turn, you don't get the Fights First ability from that. Now, units that are Fights First will always alternate activation, starting with the inactive player. This can be a little complicated, so let me break it down for you. If I charge with my, say, Mazrog, and I charge your Master of Executions for World Eaters, both of our units have the Fights First ability, because the Master of Executions has Fights First inbuilt into the datasheet, and Mazrog has Fights First because he charged. Well, you are the inactive player because I charged you, which means you activate first. It's very frustrating, and it makes charging units that have the Fights First ability inbuilt into the datasheet and not reliant upon charging very challenging to deal with. So after the Fights First, so basically what happens is Mazrog would charge in, Master of Executions fights, then Mazrog would fight, and then we would alternate all other Fights First units. So if my opponent doesn't have any more Fights First units, then I would just go ahead and activate all the units I charge with in that turn. Then we go on to the Fights Normal phase, where my opponent will actually start the first continuing combat. So once you're out of the Fights First, you're into all other combat. And that, once again, starts with the inactive player. So let's go right on to some of these scary Fights First units. So Custodes, like the entire army of Custodes have some very powerful Fights First because they have a 2 CP stratagem, 2 Fights First. Not to mention the special character Trajan Valorous, or Trajan Valorcus, if you are a member of the Adeptus Custodes, has the ability innately to give his unit Fights First once per game. And this is exceptionally powerful because, just to give you guys like a stat check here, Custodes Terminator Brick, they are going to cause 11 damage to Mazrog Scragbad, who is one of the toughest units in the entire game. And that's going to kill him outright. This is a really big deal. Now, I did include the +1 to wound strat in that, and that's simply because they're always going to have access to it because they get to use that strat for free. So once per battle round at least. So they're always going to have it. So they'll actually kill Mazrog, which is one of the toughest units in the entire game. Master of Executions. If he charges Mazrog, he's going to deal 11 damage on average. If Mazrog charges him, he's going to deal 6 damage on average. So this guy by himself slaps so hard, he actually might be the highest value character in the entire freaking game. Plague Marines with the Stinky Boy. Listen, I know. I didn't do all the mathematics on it, but it's a lie. If you have a 10-man Plague Marine unit with the, it's not the Biologus Putrefier, it's the Foul Blight Spawn. If it's the Foul Blight Spawn, that unit will kill Angron. It'll kill a lot of things that charge. So you cannot just charge these units because they will devour you. All right. So how the heck are we going to get around this? So I've come up with a couple different methods. So the first one's really easy. I call it this. So anyway, I started blasting. You Overwatch, you shoot them. Okay, yes, everyone understands that. We're going to move on. We're not going to discuss that anymore. So I've got 3 different methods of dealing with Fights First as a combat army or in the combat phase. The first is going to be the Tag and Trap. So, and then we have one called Pilein Nerd, and then lastly we have Fights on Death. These are the 3 real ways to get around these Fights First. There's one sub-way that I'll just mention right now, and that's going to be the Tank Shock, right? Because in the charge phase, let's say you're going into just a solo character that has fights first, okay, you can always tank shock that guy dead. Sure. But it's not really going to work great against a unit. So tank shock's not a great method, which is why I didn't really include it here. So I'm going to start going in depth here. So I'm going to give you the definitions and how it works, and then I'm going to immediately show you on TTS how to pull this method off. So the tag and trap. Essentially what we're going to do here is we are tagging the fights first damage dealers into something that you don't care about dying. So I would use trucks, rhinos, chaff, all sorts of things, because remember how this works. Pile in and fights rules. If you're within 1 inch or if you're base to base, with a model that is base to base. So if I end up basing, say, a Master of Executions with my truck, I am then free to charge the rest of his unit with something else. So the Master of Executions will not be able to fight the rest of my unit. He'll have to fight the truck or anything that's within 1 inch of him, or anything that he's base to base with that's base to base. So I'm going to go ahead and show you on TTS how to pull this off, because sometimes this can be a little confusing just listening. So let's move on to the TTS screen. And through the magic of the internet, here we are. So I set up this really cool strategy right here. So essentially what I have laid out for you is I've got Mozrog Scragbad, this beautiful beast right here, and I've got a truck. Then we have the Master of Executions rocking a unit of Khorne Berserkers. Now the Khorne Berserkers do hit hard, don't get me wrong, but Mozrog isn't necessarily scared of them. But let's say my Moz is on like, I don't know, 4 wounds left. I can't charge the Master of Executions because on average, the Master of Executions will fight first and kill him. So how the heck do I deal with this? So what I do is I take my expendable unit or my truck and I charge my truck first. So my truck charges in, and what he does is he is going to base both the Master of Executions and the Khorne Berserker over here. Well, he doesn't really have to, but anyway, all I really need to do is base the Master's Executions, because now the Master of Executions will not get to pile in when he fights. So now I'm free to charge Mozrog and just tag this one Khorne Berserker over here. Just make sure I got them base to base for my demonstration, because I don't want to mess that up. All right, they're all base to base here. So now what happens is the Master of Executions squad is still going to fight first. But since he's already been base-to-base contact with the truck, he will not be able to get within 1 inch of Mozrog, which means he can't fight Mozrog. And honestly, I don't particularly care if just 2 Khorne Berserkers end up fighting Mozrog. Now, this is something to be really, really cautious of. You need to make sure that you pre-measure this, because you don't want to allow an opponent to pile in and then get his character base to base. So let's say that this Khorne Berserker happened to have a much bigger base, just for demonstration purposes. He doesn't, but just for demonstration purposes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase his base size. At this point in time, he could get base to base with Mozrog and make it so that his Master of Executions was then base to base with him, which would allow the Master of Executions to fight. So you need to make sure that this works with the base sizes that you have to work with. Now I'm just going to put him back to his normal size now. So in this situation, though, that won't work just because of the base size, but you have to watch out for that if you're going into a different style of unit. So now what we're going to have is this Khorne Berserker gets to pile in, but he has to end his movement closer to the truck because the truck is the closest unit. So he can come over here and do it. And then he's close enough, so he'll still be able to fight into Mozrog as well. But once again, Mozrog is not really scared of these Khorne Berserkers because they're winning him on 6s. So I think he'll be okay with that. So now the Master of Executions is going to have to hit the truck. Maybe he kills the truck. I don't care, because at that point in time, Mozrog is going to murder face this whole unit. So that is the tag and trap. Tag it with a unit you don't necessarily care about so that the other part of your unit can charge in without fearing for his life. So let's go back into the PowerPoint now, and I'm going to talk about the next method. And here we are. Okay, so this is the Pilein Nerd, and we have 2 different variations to this strategy. One, you get to pile in, and 2 is you get to force your opponents to pile in into the wrong method. Okay, so let me go into the Pilein Nerd variations. So essentially what happens is your enemies who have the fights first ability, they will activate first. But in 10th edition, you get to fight units that you did not declare a charge against. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to charge a unit that does not have fights first and then pile in to the unit that does have fights first. Because once we do that pile in, we've already activated our units, which means we will still strike before the unit that has the fights first. That can be a little bit confusing, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shift back to the TTS view, and I'm going to demonstrate this in real time so that you can understand how this works just a wee bit better. Let's go back to the live. Okay, so I'm going to go back to this other scenario right here. This is what I got set up. We have Trajan Volorcus's unit, and he's all like, hello, charge me on my home field objective. I'm going to fight first and slaughter all of your knobs. Well, I don't need to deal with this because that is going to be a huge headache. So what I'm going to do is I'm only going to charge these prosecutors right here. So I'm going to charge my knobs into the prosecutors. So let's take this knob and he's going to go, let's say I roll like, I don't know, like a 6-inch charge. So or let's go with a 7-inch charge because a 7-inch charge is the average, right? So we'll do a 7-inch charge and we'll just stay outside of 1 inch right there. Then this guy is going to have to go 4 point. Let's just go ahead and block our bases right here. So he'll go 5. This guy will not be able to get base to base. So at this point in time, I can move the rest of my unit however the heck I want, as long as I maintain coherency. So what I'll do is I'll bring this guy right here, just making sure I stay outside of 1 inch. I'll bring this guy right here, making sure I stay outside of 1 inch. I can bring this guy over here because they're still getting closer to the Sisters of Silence. Maybe we can move you a little bit even further. We can bring you over here. And then we can bring you over here. And then we can bring you over here. And then you can come maybe over here. And you can come over here to make sure that we maintain coherency. So now, the Trajan squad is not engaged because I'm still outside of 1 inch of them. I'm just cleaning up to make sure that it's all good for the video purposes. But I did successfully complete my charge into the Sisters of Silence. Now, the reason why I didn't go all the way here is because with a 6-inch movement, I was unable to actually make the base over here. So what I did is I moved these 2 knobs, and I actually blocked myself from being able to base here. So I won't be able to because of the positioning of their bases. Then what's going to happen now is I'm going to go ahead and activate my knobs because Trajan squad is not engaged. They cannot activate their fights first ability. So my knobs will then just move in like so. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. And then the rest of them will do exactly the same. See, we put you here, and then we can put you right here. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 knobs getting to fight Trajan squad without giving them the option to fight first. It is a thing of beauty. So you need to use your targets in such a way that this is the way it goes down. Okay, cool. Now, let's talk about the second part of the method. So this is what happens on the first Pilein Nerd strategy. You want to make sure that you charge a unit that does not have fights first so you can pile into the unit that does have fights first. So I'm going to go to another example here where you force your opponent to pile in. So let's go ahead and charge what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll an advance roll on my Gretchen here. So let's go ahead and do that. You can also do it with a charge, but there's a couple different varieties. So I rolled like a 12-inch advance on my Gretchen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of my Gretchen just like this. And maybe I'm a little sloppy here, but I'm staying outside of 1 inch of all of these guys. He's going to run up there. So let's move one of these first guys a little bit differently. We'll put him over here, and we'll put him just outside of 1 inch of that guy. Boom, 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 boom. This would always also work if I just wanted to charge them, but I'm just showing you different ways of doing it so that you can use your own creativity in your games. So then I'm going to go ahead and charge my knobs in. And let's have my knobs make their charge. So they're going to charge in right about here. Boom, 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 boom. Let's say that this guy comes in. We'll give him a 7-inch charge, I think. So I can't fit through there, so I'll just put myself right here. Make sure this is 1 inch. So we're gonna make this guy 1 inch away. We'll have to keep them like this. All right. You're gonna come over here, and you're gonna come over here, and you're gonna come right here, and you're gonna come right here, and you're gonna come right here, and then you get to come maybe over here. So then what's going to happen is if my opponent uses their fights first ability, let's say this guy was standing right here instead. If my opponent was using his fights first ability, what's going to have to happen is he activates it, but he has to pile in towards the closest enemy model. So he has to move like this. Well, he's not going to be able to move like that because he's going to end up having to, but he's going to have to go closer to the closest enemy models, right? While maintaining coherency. So what's going to end up happening is he's going to waste 4 of his Alaruses killing Gretchen, and only 1 will attack my knobs. And that is the beauty of your pile-in shenanigans. Because when your opponents pile in, they have to pile in towards the closest enemy unit. So I make him waste all of his attacks into my Gretchen, which I don't care about. Okay, this one will activate, and maybe he'll kill a couple old knobs, Let's say he kills 3, but my knobs will then get to shred the unit. And that is the beauty of part 2 of the Wrap and Trap. So let me read the text because I think I may have skipped past it a little bit for you. So we'll go right back to the PowerPoint. Weep, weep. And we're back onto the PowerPoint. So basically, units, here's the TLDR. Units activate before the Pilein. We also no longer need to charge a unit to attack them. This can require you to block yourself at many, many different times. So how exciting is that? I've got one more method here, and this one's actually probably the easiest to pull off, but it is called the Fight on Death method. Many units in the game have this ability. Knobs have it. Sisters of Battle have it. Space Marines have it. Everyone, lots of people have access to Fight on Death. So generally speaking, it is reactive, and most enemies' defensive stratagems are reactive. So let's take this one step at a time. If my knobs ended up charging those Alaris Terminators and my Gretchen were not there, let's say the Alaris Terminators decide, okay, well, we will fight first, and they'll spend their 2 CP for it, and then they'll do their Pileins and they kill my knobs. Well, what's going to happen is I'm going to react by spending 2 CP to Fight on Death. Now, the way Fight on Death is typically worded, and there might be 1 or 2 stratagems in the game that's worded a little bit differently, but for the sake of this one, the way it's worded is that when this model is killed, before removing from play, have that model pile in and make its attacks. So let's say the Alaris Terminators kill my entire Knob Squad. Well, one by one, those models will actually pile in and make their attacks. But my unit has not activated yet, and this is the key. Since my unit hasn't been selected to activate, and I'm just doing it model by model, my opponent cannot activate defensive stratagems that would require them to be selected as the target of an attack. Therefore, the Alaris Terminators will not be able to spend 2 CP on Arcane Genetic Alchemy to be -1 to damage. If I'm going into Space Marines or Grey Knights, they won't be able to use the stratagems that, like the Armor of Contempt, to be at ignoring 1 blitz of my AP. So this Fight on Death makes it almost impossible for them to use those stratagems when they are fighting first, because my unit does not get selected to attack them yet, because I'm doing it 1 by 1. And I'll just show you real fast on TTS how that works. But pretty much it's more or less self-explanatory. So here we go. We're just going to basically just do this. Here, we'll do it up here because this is easier. So let's get rid of these Sisters of Silence. Pew, 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 pew. And we'll have all these knobs just be right here. So Trajan is going to activate his once per game ability to give everyone fights first. So he's going to do that, and I'm going to spend 2 CP to Fight on Death. Well, what happens is Trajan's squad slaughters all of my knobs, because that's exactly what would happen. And then my knobs, 1 by 1, will be piling in, and they'll get to fight. But my knob squad has not been selected, so Trajan they can't spend 2 CP to be -1 damage here. And then I end up killing the crap out of him as well. So it becomes a very good trade into an expensive fight first unit. So guys, these are the 3 main methods of how to deal with fights first as a combat army. Of course, there are other options as well, like we mentioned the tank shock. That can work, but that really only works on individual models, not units nearly as well. And then lastly, you also have the ability to just shoot the crap out of them to death. And that's generally pretty good too. People like shooting them, but many times you can't, because if your opponent is a good player and they're using a melee army, they're going to leverage their fights first, and they're not going to give you the option to shoot them to death. So guys, this is how you deal with fights on death. If you found value in this video, please show me a little bit of love. Like, subscribe, comments. I go through stuff like this in the Discord every single day. We've got lots of members in the members-only side of the Discord, but we love our free members also. So we definitely talk and converse in the free members area as well to spread some love to them as well. But if you are in the members-only Discord, I actually regularly do workshops at night where I'm just live streaming and people will just pop on in and we'll go through advanced combat techniques like this. So until next time, everybody, I love you all and enjoy your happy crumpin'. You guys rock. Bye-bye.